Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Data Talk podcast. I'm your host, Destiny White, and I'm here today to chat with Ashley Knight, Senior Vice President of Product and leader of the product management team for Experian's financial services and data business. We'll be chatting about Experian's recent and super exciting collaboration with Plaid, a leading financial data network trusted by 1 in 2 U.S. bank account holders. So, Ashley, before we dive more into the collaboration with Plaid, could you tell us a bit about your role at Experian and what excites you most about the work that you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. And so happy to be here. I've actually been with Experian for over 11 years now, and I oversee our product management part of our business within the B2B side. And I have a focus on all things data. And so that means alternative data like scores and attributes. I oversee data quality and very relevant, all of our open banking and cash flow capabilities specific to B2B, which is definitely top of mind right now for lenders and consumers alike, as well as regulatory bodies.
Absolutely. So you mentioned cash flow and open banking. I'd like to double click here. You are very passionate about this, I can tell. Can you explain why, from your perspective, what opportunities can cash flow data create?
Yeah, there's so many opportunities here because if you think about what we focus on today within the credit ecosystem, it's all around how you pay your loans, your credit cards, your mortgage, and everyday people are making other financial choices such as paying rents, paying utility bills, and how they save for the future. And this whole other side of a consumer's financial health that you don't see when you look at someone's credit report. And so cash flow brings to light this whole other set of data about a consumer so that a lender can fully assess the opportunities that may be there to lend them or offer them a product or service. So because this type of data is not typically factored into lending decisions, as soon as we start pulling these insights into the credit ecosystem, we can really help millions of consumers start to gain access to more affordable credit. And this is super important because we know there are a lot of consumers out there who have very limited credit histories. In fact, 100 million Americans are excluded from the mainstream credit ecosystem, either because they're credit invisible, which means they have no credit, or they're thin file consumers, which means they have very limited credit history, or they could also be subprime consumers. And so because nearly 20% of the population can't access fair and affordable credit, it's so important and relevant. And that's why it's so meaningful to me to be part of this to drive greater inclusion overall. And as you probably know, financial inclusion is part of Experian's DNA. We've been focused on this for some time now, and we're committed to driving greater financial inclusion. And cash flow really drives and uncovers untapped potential in how we can start to lend more to consumers who don't have access. So we're super focused on making this data actionable and available alongside our core credit data to really give a more holistic view of a consumer.
This is so exciting. I absolutely love to hear this. And there's been a lot of buzz actually about cash flow data and open banking for a while now. And based on what you just said, I can definitely see why. And I'm curious, what are you hearing from clients? Where are they at in terms of leveraging these insights and what challenges are they facing when they're doing so?
Yeah, there is a significant appetite and focus on cash flow overall. And it's fascinating because it's not a new data set, right? We've all had bank accounts and bank account information that we've shared in the past as consumers, be it for submitting your taxes or linking to provide payments. So it's not new from that perspective, but it is new in terms of credit decisioning. That's what's shifted over the past several years. So there is an appetite in market because largely of the focus on financial inclusion. And financial inclusion is something we've talked about for many years. That too is not a new topic by any stretch. However, what has shifted a bit within the industry is organizations are starting to put much more focused initiatives, tactics, and tangible actions towards driving financial inclusion. And this is where cash flow can really become a game changer. And so the market is interested, and those in the market, depending on where they sit, be it a fintech or a regional bank or a large credit card issuer, everyone's in a different place within their journey. But either way, most organizations are either assessing cash flow data or using it today. What is a little bit of a sticking point and can be a challenge is the how around cash flow. So how do I assess this data? How do I integrate this data into my workflows? I already use credit data, so how can I seamlessly add this data as well as credit data into assessing a consumer's likelihood to pay? In addition, there's concerns around capturing consumer consent of this data and hesitation to add any additional, what may be considered friction to the process overall. So those are a few of the challenges with leveraging cash flow, but that is where Experian comes into play. We're highly focused on making real-time cash flow available as well as available in batch. And we've created a suite of solutions based on this to help lenders leverage the information so that they can create more opportunities for consumers as part of their financial inclusion initiatives, and also continue to drive responsible lending. So earlier this year, in fact, we launched our Experian Cashflow Score, and we've seen it provides up to 25% lift in predictive performance when compared to conventional credit scores. Our score leverages consumer permissioned transaction information and can be used across credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, and more. And like I mentioned, highly predictive, and even more so when you start combining the cash flow transaction data with credit data. So really exciting when we think about the credit ecosystem. And from there, we've taken it a step even further. And as you mentioned in the opening, we've made it easier for lenders to start leveraging this type of data through our recent collaboration with Plaid. So Plaid is a leading financial data network, and now lenders can leverage Plaid's secure connectivity and their capabilities combined with our expertise in analytics from a single solution.
Wow, that's so exciting. Can you tell me more about the work that we are doing with Plaid and how this is actually helping our clients and consumers? Maybe walk me through an example of what this looks like and why exactly Experian chose to work specifically with Plaid in this capacity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a real life example is something I think we can all relate to as a consumer, whether it has happened to us or whether it has happened to someone that we know. But if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who either just recently graduated from college, doesn't have any credit, they landed their first job, they started making a steady income, they're responsible with their bills, so they pay their rent on time, they pay their utilities, and they started saving a bit of a nest egg, if you will. But when they apply for their first credit card, they get denied because they have no credit history at all. And so we've all been there, right? We had to all start somewhere. And because they don't have any credit history, a lender may not feel comfortable providing them credit. And so at this point, what they could do is ask for permission from the consumer to access their bank account information to assess their cash flow data for potential to turn around the decision to offer them credit overall. So the consumer would consent, and Plaid would generate what's called a consumer report. That report is then sent to the lender and sent to Experian so that we can provide back our cash flow score or our predictive attributes to the lender so they can determine how they want to proceed in real time with that consumer. So, ultimately, right, that's one example where a consumer doesn't have any credit and they could potentially get approved for a loan despite not having a lot of credit history. And ultimately, this gives the lender a broader view of the consumer's overall financial behavior, which in the end will give millions of consumers who are excluded from mainstream credit a shot at credit that they deserve. So we're really making it easy. The collaboration with Plaid adds an additional component to this. We can scale the impact overall. So Plaid is already trusted by 1 in 2 US bank account holders. They are linking 750,000 accounts daily on their network. And so while Experian has developed our own homegrown, robust tools like our categorization engine, our attributes, our cash flow score, I mentioned, we've developed that here in house. Plaid's infrastructure and trust and connectivity directly to the consumer's bank accounts simplifies the data access at scale. Working together, these two organizations combined are helping to overcome these significant industry challenges in permissioning and utilizing consumer permission data, ultimately enabling greater and informed credit decisions.
That is so exciting, and this will open up so many doors for consumers.
Yeah.
Can we talk about consumer trust and transparency when it comes to using cash flow data and how we're thinking about that?
Trust and transparency is so important. We know this, and we want to make sure that consumers have control over their data. It's core to who we are at Experian, and this can be seen, this philosophy, through what we've launched with our Experian Boost service. 6 years ago, we launched the Experian Boost service so that a consumer could permission access to their bank account to boost their credit score. So we take this very seriously, and it's one of our big considerations in choosing to work with a company like Plaid. We also know that over 70% of consumers are willing to permission access to their bank account information if it gives them better pricing, a better credit product, etc. And so it's important to create an experience and to develop not only the trust, but the value back to the consumer when they do permission access to their bank account information. In the case of our Experian Cashflow Score, we're creating an experience that is clear, it's transparent, and it gives consumers control every step of the way.
That is great to hear and so important. Before we wrap up, I'd like to take a look ahead and hear you kind of already touched on this, but what excites you most about financial inclusion?
I think it's just the difference that we can make in consumers' lives. I mentioned earlier the 100 million Americans that lack access to credit, and I think that alone is a reason to drive forward the acceleration of cash flow data overall. We've seen the impact that Experian Boost can have on consumers' credit, and I think there's so much more that we can do overall, not only at Experian as an organization, but as industry experts, thought leaders, etc., to accelerate the adoption and really help drive financial inclusion and responsible lending.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Data Talk, Ashley. This was a fantastic conversation. I loved your insights and I'm so excited.
Thank you so much for having me.